because you're not going to bump into a stranger in your living room. You're not going to find a new friend sitting on the couch alone. But you might on the way to the bathroom at the library. Or you might see someone pick up a book that you really love and you're going to give an endorsement. Or you might see somebody order something that you're like, hey, what is that? Was it good? Should I get it? There are going to be opportunities when you just put yourself in places where there are other people. Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot.
Post-pandemic, it feels as though our social skills have atrophied.
It feels like the barrier to entry to meeting new people and cultivating community is higher than ever before. But we believe that meaningful relationships are the key to a fulfilling life.
So we're ditching the surface-level conversations to ask and answer questions all about human connection. Join us in creating something more human. It's snowing a ton today, so we're sipping on a little more humanity.
We are.
If you wonder what's in our cups.
We haven't paid enough attention to the tea lately because we've been busy, but...
It's tea time.
But it is tea time, and this tea just absolutely slaps. And I never drink warm drinks, even on the show.
You're the kind of person that orders an iced drink 365 days a year.
I think this might be my second or third time of the year drinking something hot.
It's November.
I know. And I think all three of those have been this tea.
We just finished reading the book, The Art and Science of Connection by Kasley Killam in our Something More Society book club for October. So as we kind of leave the inspiration of that month and that book, we really wanted to dive in on the broader scale with you all. So we're going to kick off with a new segment and I'll let Elliot pick it up.
And in the spirit of me wanting to read word by word what I write, I'm going to actually do that right now because there's no way I can memorize this. So when we were thinking of a title for the episode and we were you were reading the book to me on the car ride back, and she mentioned something about the loneliness economy. And there, sometimes when you're like, maybe like you're driving down a road and like instinctively that you've just never driven down this road in your entire life, or when you like hear words, like a string of words together and you feel like you've never heard those words before. I don't know if you can relate or you can relate, but
I can't, but I know that you feel that way often.
With the loneliness economy, I was like those three words together sound, I know cool is not the right word, uneducated word, but I liked the way that it sounded together and I knew that I'd never heard of that. And I instantly knew that was what I wanted to title the episode. And luckily you were on board. But basically she was talking about how coalitions, in different countries all over the world have dedicated a bunch of money and resources to creating these coalitions to address loneliness, the epidemic of loneliness in the world. I wrote that there has been a ton of money made off of people's loneliness. At the same time, it's like this dichotomy, like talking about the loneliness economy. It's good and bad, right? There's all these different programs that have been created to address it, but also I think that there was so much money to be made off of people's loneliness. And we've seen that over the course of, a couple decades, especially with the rise of with social media. So for a while, I've been wanting to create a segment where we just read comments from YouTube videos that we find really important, and the dichotomy of this topic is striking because we're talking about social health and the epidemic of loneliness and how social media has a role to play in it, while at the same time realizing that the internet and comment sections specifically are extremely valuable and beneficial. I wrote, nowhere in person can you go and read/listen to hundreds, if not thousands of stories, opinions, and reflections from all over the world, seemingly simultaneously, right? And I think that's like probably my favorite part about the internet is the comment section. So we're going to create a new segment called Humanity is in the comment section. And after coming up with the title, The Loneliness Economy, I was very curious to see what popped up on YouTube. So I looked up the loneliness economy. There's one video that pops up. I decided not to look at it because I didn't want to be influenced by the content. But the video below it, I did look at. And that video is titled How We Became the Loneliest Generation. So I thought, first of all, it's interesting that when I put in the loneliness economy, that video popped up. Second one. So I decided to go to the comments and read the comments. And it was pretty emotional. We went over some of them together and we're going to go over some of them with you. And I just think that it's something that you could never get. For me, it's something I can never get tired of because these are real people talking about real issues. Obviously, sometimes there are definitely certain videos that have a really toxic comment section, but we're we're not in the business of looking at videos like that. We don't want to give those energy and attention, and instead give attention to videos that are really meaningful and emotional, and then looking at the comments and seeing what people from all over the world have to say. And so this comment section is pretty intense.
When we interviewed Dan Harris, the thing that has stood out to me months after that interview is the idea of cathartic normalization and saying things out loud which may be embarrassing or difficult to voice, or for whatever reason we might shy away from. This feels like a version of that, because you can relate to some of these stories, and different people will relate to different stories. Like what you relate to and resonate with, I might not, and vice versa.
Right. I totally agree with that. This first comment is from David-XK8UF. Traveling the world in the 90s, every hotel lobby was a meeting point with making music together, playing games, drinks, and chatting with people from all around the world. Now people sitting in the lobby alone watching videos from home on the smartphone. We lost humanity. We just got back from Paris. We stayed at the Hoxton, and there was so much happening at that hotel all of the time. Did we experience people sitting on their phones and just vegging out? Absolutely. We did that probably the first day we got there. We were jet lagged. But there were so many things that were happening all the time. They had that incredible Halloween party. They had 2 going on at one time. They had like 2 restaurants, a bar. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think what they do strategically well is that they are catering both to their guests, which are tourists, and they're creating offerings and physical spaces for people to frequent. So even if you're not a tourist and you maybe live in the neighborhood or live nearby, you have a place to go to. We saw people in the lobby on their computers studying and doing work literally every single day. And so I think there's some kind of interesting dynamic that the hotel industry could kind of tap into, which is how do you cater to both of these types of people? Because as a consumer, I might overlook restaurants and bars at hotels because I'm like, oh, they're overpriced, or oh, they're just for tourists, or oh, they're not for me.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting way to think about how we can be diverse in our offerings from a business perspective and from like a gathering perspective. Because I am struggling or in opposition or tension with the idea that you need to niche down and you need to be one thing because you can't be everything for everyone. And in a world where we have the opportunity to travel and to move and to start over and to bring different cultures and different types of people into the same space, how do we create an environment where people can come to that are not just one specific thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what you said made me think of, I never go to a hotel. There's not a hotel I can think of in Albuquerque. And I was about to say there's not a hotel I can think of in Denver that I'd want to go to because it has a place that feels like a third space, aka maybe like a coffee shop attached to it. But that sort of changed because Populous just opened up and Little Owl's inside. And that feels pretty special, you know? The next one is really cute and all, but also sad. A lot of these are sad, but I think that it's just important to talk about these. I just think that they're it's evidence. It's evidence that how people feel, and it's good to know. And I think it's important to know how people feel. This one is from Giannetti. I grew up with a turtle at 10 years old. She was my best and only friend. Having a pet to care for helped the loneliness, especially since they look at you with unconditional love, or at the very least an excitement for food. Turtle is my preference because I was allergic to cats and dogs. Laid back and a long-time companion. That has 463 likes and 25 replies. Not that those. You had a turtle?
I had a turtle growing up.
Did you?
And it was a box turtle, and it escaped our backyard, and my dad found it like running down the street, basically.
Running.
Yeah. Like it was a fast turtle.
Oh, it was fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was little though.
So you caught it?
My dad picked it up and brought it home.
Wow. That's also why I like reading the comment section, right? I don't want to ever be too prescriptive because we only have 2 lives, and they're very they're just ours, right? We only have 2 perspectives. But this person is basically saying, like, get yourself a pet. And I saw many comments like that. It's like, if you don't have a pet and you can swing it, you can afford it, like, get a pet. That'll really help. And I think that's great advice, and it's so true. Like, Venus is is very, I wouldn't say it's quite, it's almost unconditional love. I mean, if you don't feed her, would she still love you? I would hope so.
I can't remember if we talked about it on these episodes or inside the Something More Society, but in Denver, there's something called Goldens and Golden every single year, and it's like it's a huge event. Thousands of people go. If you have a golden retriever, you bring them. It's this huge event like around golden retrievers. So there's something about animals that also kind of feel diffusing. Like if you're feeling awkward in a social situation, you can say, "Oh, your dog's so cute," or like, "Hey, what's your dog's name?" And that's kind of a really easy, simple way to strike up conversation or to talk about something or to break the ice in a way.
Yeah, totally. I agree. This next one's a little bit longer. It's from NAAHFAM, NAFAM. After 3 years of disengagement, I realized the more I isolated, the more my health declined, mentally and physically. Meeting people online in 2023 isn't like it was in the early mid-2000s. Social media can be so overwhelming with endless profiles and overstimulation at your fingertips. Now more than ever, people are hypersensitive, dismissive, and at times downright rude. Socializing is for sure a muscle that needs constant exercise. Nowadays, I intentionally put myself in spaces that support human interaction, be it church, the gym, yoga, in-person classes, etc. A simple smile and a hello is enough to make me feel good. Add in a 30-second dialogue and I'm on cloud 9, lol. I don't always get it right, though. There are people sometimes who look like they want to speak to me, and I'll instead look away because, well, I still deal with a bit of nervousness and anxiety. This is a marathon, and I have to be patient with myself as I re-enter society naturally. Baby steps will have to suffice for now, and I'm okay with that.
Whoa. That comment has just like hit this whole episode nail on the head.
Pretty much.
So if you don't know about Kasley Killam and you don't know about the art and science of connection, she's a social scientist and makes the argument that social health is a key pillar in our overall health, just as physical health and mental health are. So thinking about, she gives the analogy of like a Greek pillar. So there's 3 pillars in the front. I'm imagining like a 3-legged chair where they all support weight and they all support one another. So it's interesting that this person writes even a 30-second interaction can massively transform the way that they feel about their day or their connectedness. And I definitely want to talk about everything that we're going to go over makes sense, and we can cognitively be like, yeah, I get that. It's logical, easy peasy. But in practice, what does that even mean?
Right.
And I want to challenge ourselves and you all to start with the small stuff. Smiling at someone when you pass them on the street. Ask the barista that you get your coffee from, how's your day going? And doing things that feel very small and very manageable. And it's a drop in the bucket.
This one is from Gabrielle Figueroa, 6922. I recently just hung out with friends, or people I just know, and a few strangers. The many hours I was with them, I felt socially awkward, and it raised my anxiety, not knowing that it is because of loneliness. I'm 34, got separated and then divorced in the pandemic, lost my job and had to take a 50% pay cut. I have no children and no partner. So I've been having lots of heartburn lately, and I've been thinking it's because of the caffeine drinks. Now I know that it may be the effects of loneliness. My job doesn't help either. I work 12 hours at night, 5 to 6 times a week. So I'm glad I got to see this video. Now it gives me the strength to seek a different employment. I woke up alone today, but after watching this video, I'm going to start making a difference to myself. Thank you, Digogo. Jake obviously is the author of this, creator of this video. It's pretty potent. Another one from Untitled Mixture 1531. One reason for loneliness is financial difficulties. For example, I can't hang out sometimes because I got bills and goals to achieve. People who are busy working all the time, of course, feel lonely. Because even if you have friends, you're exhausted and the only thing you need is a neat bedroom. And then the last one that I screenshotted is from Andrea Roberts, 1953. I'm older and don't have any family close by. My loneliness drastically reduced when I got a dog, specifically a boxer. People were shocked to see a 70-year-old lady out walking a boxer. They were curious and stopped to talk. If you're younger, feel like you're not accepted and can swing it, I would definitely recommend getting a dog. My baby girl got me to come out of my old lady shell.
I want to set the stage here. This is a lot of testimonies of loneliness. However, if you're listening and you're not feeling lonely, or you think that perhaps there's like a quota of loneliness per week that you have to hit in order for connection and community to be making a big difference or to be beneficial to you, like, throw that out. That's not true. You do not need to feel lonely in order to benefit from feeling connected and being an active participant in your community. Something that I think is really amazing that Kasley Killam says is the absence of illness is not the same as the presence of wellness. So just because you're not feeling lonely also doesn't mean that you're feeling connected, right? So one of these comments mentioned their physical health. There's a lot of information out there about that, and I would love to deep dive because my little scientist nerd brain, it scratches the itch. We don't have time to do that today, but I just want to quickly overview what we mean when we say health benefits. So health and longevity are directly tied to social health. We just talked about that three-legged chair or that Greek pillar. There are also negative health benefits to feeling lonely, right? So you're increasing your anxiety, increasing your cortisol, increasing your inflammation, decreasing your immune system. All of this then makes you more susceptible to disease. So feeling connected and investing in your social health can also increase your longevity and increase your overall health.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to talk about because it seems like, we're always trying to offer, light at the end of the tunnel or advice or perspective. And it's like, for someone who's easily stressed out or prone to anxiety, especially social anxiety, this information can sort of increase that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I want to say, like, even for me, like, I've experienced that in the last year and a half being in Denver in a new city. To me, this information can increase my anxiety because I'm thinking, okay, so I'm having this problem now. Not only am I having this problem, but there are dramatic health effects associated with the feeling of being lonely, and that really sucks. So I'm choosing to see it as just a kick in the pants, to really understand that it is a pillar of health, and if I don't figure it out right away, I am gonna suffer the consequences. And I don't know. It's just difficult. It's difficult to wrestle with that. But I'm like, maybe this is the motivation that I need. I keep talking about like putting yourself out there. If I know that if I don't get help, if I don't, make an effort to build a community and practice that social muscle, there will be consequences, you know? And I think maybe that's a good thing.
I can also offer another perspective, which is like, if smiling at your neighborhood barista makes you feel 1% more connected, how much easier is that than getting 10,000 steps a day? I'm not making the argument that they're replacement for each other, but these things all feed each other. So if you're struggling in other areas of your health, like finding time to exercise or eating a perfectly balanced diet, those things are important. And can we take a little bit of everything, mental health, physical health, social health, and do the things which feel manageable? And again, a drop in the bucket. Now we've got 3 drops in the bucket, right?
Right. Yeah. And we would encourage you, obviously, to pick up this book because it's incredible. But we're also, what we want to do is, kind of read a book, not so that you don't have to, but to give you some cliff notes and some inspiration to maybe open the book and read all of it,
She has a literal worksheet in the book that you can take. What kind of socialite are you? There's different archetypes that she goes through. What kind of strategies? There are different strategies that she goes through. And those will change depending on your phase of life and depending on what kind of social archetype you are.
Right.
Okay, so just because you're not feeling lonely does not mean that you're not connected. And what's really interesting about this is I totally forgot about this kind of moment in my career. So I want to take us back to 2017. For those of you that don't know, I have a very winding career journey. I have a BA in dance, I have a BS in chemistry, I have a Pilates certification, I have a personal training certification, I have a functional fitness coaching business. I've had a winding career, but as part of that journey, in 2017, I was accepted into a research fellowship working in the Office for Community Health at the University of New Mexico. And reading this book reminded me of that summer of research. I think it's really cool to read someone like Kasley Killam, who is a social scientist and who references research. We'll talk about some of that research. But this is my research, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
This research project falls within a larger longitudinal study. And by that, I mean it's multiple years. And my research was just over a summer. It was 10 weeks. And it was within the context of a diabetes program. So self-management for diabetes at a community center, multilingual, so a lot of Latino population. And the goal was really, how do we increase patient engagement in research? And there were folks who were both part of the research study and on an advisory board to continue bettering the research. So my research was around interviewing them, coding the interviews, and then finding themes in order to help the larger longitudinal study be better. And basically what I found was that the participants in the study were meeting quarterly, and there was a desire to meet more than that. Even deeper than that, there was a desire to continue building the community sense, even though a large part of this research was around education, diabetes education. So I'm just going to read the discussion, and then I have a 2024 thought. The most beneficial and valuable aspects of the experience of participating in our research project, identified by the advisors, who I was telling you are both on the advisory board and are participants in the study, were information that they gained each meeting about diabetes, and the fact that through participation in the group, their experience of community has changed the way that they manage their diabetes. A quote, "Outside of this project, we would not know how to treat ourselves. Advisors recognize the magnitude of the knowledge that they have gained through their experience on the board and expressed a desire to disseminate this information to the community." Another quote, "There's more people out there that need to know about diabetes and what it does to us. How do we get this out to the community? And as a community, how can we reach out to other people?" So as a result of my research, the larger study implemented more frequent meetings and implemented time at each meeting to cultivate that sense of community, to share recipes, to share experiences, to just like kind of chit chat with each other and deepen their overall sense of connection. But as I review this now in 2024, knowing what I know, having started this podcast with you, something that I'm seeing is also that as a result of this study, as a result of participation in this study, not only are they feeling more connected, but they're also having a deeper desire to participate more in their larger community. So taking the information and the benefits that they've received and impacting even more people. And I think that's interesting. We often think about sort of negative social cycles, like, oh, I feel anxious and therefore I'm not going to show up very well in this conversation, and therefore this person's not going to like me, and therefore I'm going to be more anxious. But this is a very positive social cycle, which is by engaging in this study, by connecting more with other participants, I'm feeling like I'm more confident in managing my own health. I'm more confident in engaging with other participants and feeling connected. And then in addition to all of that, I'm feeling even more passionate about engaging with other community members and disseminating this information beyond the study participants. In a previous episode, we've also talked about part of what makes someone feel connected is reaching out and helping another person, whether that's carry groceries, whether that's offering emotional support, whether that's finding a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
A reason why programs like AA work really, really well. And so I just wanted to kind of reflect back on that research in 2017 before I even knew that we would be building basically a career in the human connection space.
A lot of the comments in that video expressed concern over the individualistic culture that we seem to find ourselves in. And I feel like that goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, which is when in doubt, help someone out.
Mm.
And when you're so concerned and wrapped up in yourself, it's really hard to do that. And when you don't do that, it's this cycle,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's plenty of studies out there to basically to prove that societies that are, less individualistic and more community focused are obviously healthier in almost every single way. And America seems to be not the epitome, but like the entertainment mecca, and I've always thought that a country that's so concerned, or a country that spends so much money and that has such a vast entertainment industry is also a country that is probably suffering quite a bit socially,
Yeah, I think what's interesting about what you're saying is she does talk about this in the book. The downside of existing in a culture which does focus more on community is that because there's this social expectation to be a part of a community or a part of a family or a part of a network in some way, when you might feel loneliness, it's less socially acceptable and it's maybe more difficult to get back into your community and you feel even more isolated.
Sure.
It's two sides of the same coin. And the thing that stands out the most to me from this book is a key barrier is your own limiting belief. We talked with Sarah Smith about, okay, you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. But what does that even mean? Part of that is also the confidence just to show up in social situations. We talked in episode 17 kind of in depth about this, but I want to give a bit of a refresher. The brain does not match your beliefs to reality, but it matches your reality to your pre-existing beliefs, which means that what you think, your brain will then go seek the patterns to reinforce that thought and that belief. So the way that you choose to see the world actually determines the way that you show up in it. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, which can be a bit of a mindfuck if I'm going to be honest. But we're going to untangle it together.
How are we going to do that?
So I talked about earlier this negative cycle that we often think about when we consider cycles of beliefs. Oh man, I'm feeling anxious about this. Oh, I'm worried they're not going to like me. Then you kind of show up in this anxious, weird way, and then they actually don't like you that much, and then it just kind of self-perpetuates. There's this thing called the liking gap. In 2018, a study conducted by researchers from Cornell, Harvard, Yale, and the University of Essex found that following interactions, people systematically underestimated how much their conversation partner liked them and enjoyed their company, an illusion we call the liking gap. So essentially, they're saying that we systematically underestimate how much people like us. And that makes sense, right? Like our brains kind of see things in the negative as a self-protective mechanism.
Where does that come from?
I think it's our lizard brain, right? Like it's going to be safer to assume the worst as opposed to...
You don't think that though?
No, I personally don't.
Why is that? Is that genetics?
I don't know. I think that I'm just fundamentally a confident person.
So you think it is mostly based off of confidence?
Yeah, because what's the worst that can happen? I am not deeply wounded if someone's like not vibing with the conversation and don't want to be friends. That's okay. It's totally okay. And I'm like water off the duck's back. That's kind of not the case for a lot of people.
Well, it's not the case for me. And I think that's why this works so well, because we are literally on opposing sides in almost every situation. We've been talking about that word a lot, confidence, lately. And how I'm seeming to lack it more and more in social situations. And then I'm like thinking back about when and where that started, because I feel like I didn't really used to be that person. And I keep thinking that, like we talked about in the other episode, that, COVID didn't really affect me socially. I thought that my social skills weren't really affected. And you're like, oh, my social skills were faux show affected, your words.
Quote unquote.
And so I'm like, maybe that really did happen to me, because I feel like more and more, going to the coffee shop yesterday, you should have seen this interaction yesterday between Sam and I. Trying to go to the coffee shop. It's their first day. They haven't actually opened yet, but they're about to. and I wanted to take a bottle of wine and write them a card, and must have spent 20 minutes talking to you, calling Lino to get advice, calling my mom to get advice on whether or not I should do this and what I might say when I walked in. There's like this very strange thing that's happening in my brain where I feel like everything has to be rehearsed, where it almost feels like I have to anticipate exactly how the conversation is going to happen. And I have to anticipate every single question they might ask me. And I have to make sure that I have an answer in advance.
Do you know why that is?
That never used to be the case with me, though.
Do you know why that is?
It's happening more and more. Where you're talking about lack of confidence. Is that what you're going to say?
Absolutely.
Right, but where's that coming from, though? Where, to me, that's what I'm trying to answer for myself. I'm like, you're proving your own point in a good way, right? Like you're saying it's about confidence, and I'm thinking we're talking about the liking gap. I assume so often that people do not like me, and I'm sure there are people
even
watching
today.
that don't, and that's totally fine. But the point is that most often when you have a regular interaction with someone that you're just meeting, they're probably going to at least mediumly like you. They haven't met you before, so unless you're walking up to them and introducing yourself and saying, "I think you're terribly ugly," they're probably going to like you neutrally at the very least, right?
Yes.
But I'm always thinking, right when I meet somebody, I'm like overly observant and I'm looking at their facial expressions. And then if a facial expression is different later, I'm thinking I must have said something wrong. They do not like me. And you're saying it's lack of confidence, and that might be true, and that probably is true. And I'm trying to figure out, and I'm sure that many of you are trying to figure out, if you're in the same place as me, where is that coming from? Why am I assuming that people don't like me? And why are you assuming that people do like you? That's a great thing, right? Like you should assume that. Everyone should assume that if you believe yourself to be a good person, which most of us are at least pretty decent people. So it's fascinating because I don't know where it came from, but it seems to have crept up on me.
You're setting me up to weave this experience that you're talking about, the book and the liking gap. So here's a quote from Kasley Killam in this book. Lonely people tend to be hypervigilant in social interactions and prone to focusing on the negative versus the positive. So I think it's another chicken or the egg thing. And by focusing on if it's the chicken or the egg, you're missing the point, which is both by investing in your self-confidence and your relationship with yourself, and by investing in your relationships and feeling more connected, both of those things will work to relieve the anxiety that you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do one or the other, and you can't expect one or the other to be the fix-all.
Do you think that's easier said than done, or do you believe
Yes.
that that's
No,
you do?
100%.
And why?
I mean, I think most things are easier said than done because we can cognitively be like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then you go to do it and you're mixing logic and emotion and experience. And then things get gray and complicated because life is not black and white. Another quote from the liking gap study. The liking gap persisted in conversations of varying lengths and even lasted for several months as college dorm mates developed new relationships. Our studies suggest that after people have conversations, they are liked more than they know. So here's what I love about what Kasley does in this book. She basically challenges us to just assume that people like us. What would change in our life if we just assumed that people liked us, even just a little bit? You're saying like worst case scenario, when you meet someone for the first time, they might feel neutrally about you. What if they liked you like just a little bit, as opposed to thinking that they actually didn't like you just a little bit? How might that change the way that you then show up? How might that shift the way that your subconscious seeks out patterns in your life?
I was just going to say that I think that I often believe that it works the opposite way. Like in order to love myself, I have to jump through all of these hoops when sometimes it really is kind of a matter of tricking your brain. And what I mean by tricking your brain is in this example, which is just choosing to believe, just look at it as an experiment and choose to believe that when you meet someone that they like you.
Mm-hmm.
And get yourself into a habit of doing that and create a challenge for yourself for 30 days for this month. Every single new person I meet, I am going to reflect in my journal to keep tabs. And then even if you don't quite believe it yet, especially on the first time, you probably won't. But by the 30th time, you're probably going to notice that you do believe it more often and that you did experience an increase in joy or an increase in the social interactions that you did have, the quality of the social interactions that you had, right? And I think that that's so profound because it sometimes does feel like a game for me that I have to trick my brain to believe something good about myself when that's okay. Like what's the worst that could happen, you know? And we've said that so many times, and I guess that's something that I have to do, that I need to just create some sort of challenge or game for myself when I meet new people, to just choose to believe that they like me a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that there's not a singular pathway to believing this. I think that you can trick your brain. You can start to experience people voicing that they like you more often. You can start to feeling good about yourself. There are kind of multiple paths to the same destination that start feeding a big snowball effect. So the more you do it, I think the more sources of input you'll get, and the better you'll feel.
Also, I think everything is evidence, right? So if we look at our lives as an experiment, which sometimes I do, and we're talking about experiments and studies, perhaps the way you feel the way that you feel is the way you feel about other people is a reflection of the way you feel about yourself. But also, could it be, maybe I have to look at my other relationships, all of my other relationships, including this one. And if I'm prone to thinking that people don't like me, then maybe there's a good reason why I don't think that people like me.
It's because you don't like you.
Well, or is it because I don't treat you well enough, or I don't treat Ramon well enough, or I don't reach out to my friends as much as I should, or I don't reach out to my parents as much as I should, right? Like, could all those things influence the way that I feel about people I've never met?
Part what we were talking about with Sarah Smith in the last episode, if you begin to find more compassion, more love for yourself, it's significantly easier to then go do that for strangers. You find less fault in them in the ways that you find fault in yourself, right? By practicing that kind of compassionate self-talk or self-observation. Again, with the snowball, as you start to feel more confident, more compassionate, more loving towards yourself, you'll enable yourself to show up in a better way for your friends. You'll have more pride in the way that you participate in your other relationships. And that just goes back to this multiple pathways feeding your pride and your confidence and the way that you perceive and feel about yourself.
Right. I also have not had a job, a regular, whatever you want to call, whatever regular means. I haven't had a 9 to 5, 8 to 6, 10 to 6 job since 2020, right? And I know that there's been this obviously great awakening of the way people feel about, working for the man, so to speak, and putting your life and your body and all your time on the line to barely be able to make ends meet. But I think maybe there's also something really good about having a job like that, having a steady job where you can interact with people. And I think that that's what I'm lacking, which is why I think I've been really looking to just get a regular job like that, getting a coffee shop job. If anybody in Denver knows of a coffee shop hiring
a local coffee shop,
someone with zero experience in coffee, but
a lot of passion,
but the most passion probably ever, let me know. It might have to be a place like Starbucks that I would get my start in, but that's not the point.
I think this goes back to limiting beliefs. Like, I've said this before, and I'm just going to beat this drum until it falls apart. What if it worked? What does it cost you to believe something? To believe that you're capable of getting a job at a coffee shop with zero experience? To believe that the person that you're talking to likes you? To believe that if you think it and you work towards it, it can happen? What does it cost you?
Nothing. I think it's just about discipline and thinking. It's like free will, right? I think free will is also this, how do I explain it? I feel like free will is choosing to do the thing that is really difficult to do, because we're all sort of just wired to act a certain way based off all the habits and all the ways that we've been wired, right?
Sure.
So it's difficult to choose free will, to choose to think completely the opposite way of the way that you normally think. And I guess that just comes down to discipline and awareness, right?
So let's talk about strategies. Like, okay, again, all of this is easier said than done. It's very simple to say, okay, Sam, okay, Elliot, I understand the studies. I'm hearing what you're saying.
Mhm.
I agree that social health is important, but like, what do I literally do out in the world in my day-to-day? We already touched on one. Do the small things. Can you shoot a text to your friend and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, how are you?
Take it a step up, though. Give them a call. Just give them a call.
Can you, in your commute home, dial someone up instead of listening to the latest album of whoever or listening to the news on the radio? Could you strike up conversation with the barista or the waiter or the person that you're interacting with in the grocery store line?
You're really good at that.
I, maybe to an annoying extent, chat with everybody. I love it. I think it's so fun. Also, like, it feels so low stakes. Like, just to ask someone how their day is going, just to like talk about the weather. It doesn't even have to be deep for me to feel like that was nice. Like, I saw someone else's smile, I got to smile, and we're going to go about our day. 2, we're talking about it. Self-love, self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness, meditation. It can look like different things. If you haven't listened to our episode with Sarah Smith, I keep referencing it. It's called Can I Learn to Love Myself? Your strategy might look different than my strategy, and Elliot's strategy might look different than my strategy, and your strategy. It could be affirmations on sticky notes on your bathroom mirror. It could be a nightly meditation. It could be a podcast that really hypes you up. It could be journaling. It could be talking to yourself out loud. It could be kissing your knees in the shower. Whatever it looks like for you, if you don't know, find out, experiment. If it doesn't feel right, give it some time. And if it still doesn't feel right, try something new. What does it cost you to just try to go that extra mile for yourself, right?
Or if you believe that life is a simulation, just view yourself as a character in a book and think, if you're the author or whoever is the author of that book or that simulation, what would this character do?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of fun. I feel like that's like a fun thing for me to do when I'm marinating in or lamenting or suffering or in rumination. Like I don't know what the next step is. If I think about myself as a character in a book, how would this author solve this character's issue or this problem?
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to gain new perspective too. If you're feeling like you're just like spiraling in the echo chamber of your own brain.
Yeah. I'm prone to promote chat. Maybe I don't even have a good reason for that because it's inherently digital. I don't even know.
You mean you're prone to shying away from
promoting chat?
Promoting it?
Yeah,
okay.
But I think that in some cases it really helps. Like
give me an example.
Being super meta. Like I have no friends. I just moved to Denver. Whatever your situation is, like be very honest to chat about it and ask for like 10 ways that you can solve this issue. Like how would this character in this book written by this author make it fun? Mm-hmm. I do that a lot. I'm like, when I'm writing or I have an idea, I love Philip K. Dick and Cormac McCarthy. And so sometimes what I do is if I have an idea, but I'm not sure how to write it or how to explain it or how to get it out, I give chat as much information as I can. And then I tell it to write it or describe this part in the style of Philip K. Dick and Philip K. Dick's A Scan of Darkly and Cormac McCarthy's No Country for Old Men.
Interesting.
And it's so sick.
That's a hyper-specific strategy. And if you guys do that, please like slide into our DMs and tell us how it goes.
It's fun. We're giving you all these, tips and these data points and perspectives and strategies. But okay, like what do I do next? Mm-hmm. And then we proceed for the next 10 minutes, overwhelm them with all these ideas that they could do. If you live in Denver and you like coffee, DM us on Instagram.
Let's grab a coffee.
And we'll go to Hearth and get a coffee, or we'll go wherever you want to get coffee. I think that, if you live in Denver, we'd love to meet you. So invitation is there always to hang out with us. We're always looking for new pals, and there's so many great coffee shops in Denver. So, but if you don't live in Denver, I think that it really comes down to leaning into what you already have instead of focusing on the lack. Focus on what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about, what about the people that have literally no one? Like, there were comments in this YouTube comment section. There were a couple that were like, I don't have anybody. What do we say to those people? And I'm not sure.
I think it's the exact same thing that you're saying. We kind of talk a lot about how the internet and social media is to our detriment in a lot of ways. But I think if you have someone that you're like commenting on their stuff all the time, slide into their DMs. If they never read it, oh well, you're in the same position you're in right now.
That's a good
If
point.
you have been seeing the same barista or the same grocery store checkout clerk for every week for the last 6 months, say, hey, do you want to grab a beer sometime? Do you want to grab a coffee sometime? Do you want to go on a hike or a walk? It's okay if they don't want to. Just put yourself out there. And I think that can be varying degrees of scary and varying degrees of stretching your comfort zone, depending on the archetype that you are and depending on how many people you have the opportunity to do that to. Another strategy that I have is offer up a kind gesture. That could look like volunteering. That could look as simple as, oh my gosh, I love your earrings. I love your glasses.
Mm-hmm.
If it's genuine, you're going to make someone smile. And by making someone smile, you're going to smile.
And also, you reap what you sow. If you are desperately looking for validation or for someone to say something nice to you, like, practice by being that
Nice.
person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
My final strategy is we've seen kind of a degradation and elimination of third spaces. So to go and seek them out. Maybe that's studying at your local library where there are other people. Maybe that's joining a press club in your city. Maybe that's becoming a regular at the coffee shop down the street. How do you leverage what is in close proximity to you, where there are people hanging out and doing things that people do?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to bump into a stranger in your living room. You're not going to find a new friend sitting on the couch alone. But you might on the way to the bathroom at the library. Or you might see someone pick up a book that you really love and you're going to give an endorsement. Or you might see somebody order something that you're like, hey, what is that? Was it good? Should I get it? There are going to be opportunities when you just put yourself in places where there are other people.
Mm-hmm. There was a comment in the video that I referenced earlier that was talking about a loss of third spaces, which is, basically a place that you go that isn't your house or isn't a place you work. And I think in the very first episode that you and I made of the Something More Human show, we talked about proximity. And I think if we're trying to take the path of least resistance, right? And for us, the path of least resistance is this coffee shop that's just opened up, right? That's really close to us.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about living in Albuquerque, having to get in the car and drive 15 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. We have a friend who lives outside the city who has to drive 45 minutes to get to work. That can be an issue if you're someone who's suffering from loneliness and like you're trying to find places and people to meet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's difficult. And I feel like that's probably one of our favorite parts of moving to Denver, right? Is that we can walk pretty much anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like having a place that's that close is something that you should take advantage of. Even if it's not something that you really like to do. If like you don't really like coffee, go and get a tea. If you don't really like alcohol, see if they have a mocktail. But I think proximity, we don't realize how much of a crucial role that plays in our social lives. And even having to go a few blocks to the nearest coffee shop before this one opened up, psychologically in my head, it's a little bit further away, right? It's more of a walk than 30 seconds. It's
Mm-hmm.
a 5-minute walk. I don't go there as often because of that. Does that make me lazy? Sure, but it's still a data point. But now that there's this new coffee shop opening across the street, there's really no reason for us not to go,
Mm-hmm.
and we will go more often. And I know I'm already seeing it in the future. In 3 months and 6 months, we'll have made new friends at this coffee shop, and a lot of that has to do with how close it is to where we live.
I think you're also talking about convenience, and that is documented in physical health as well, right? When we talk about diet, if you have a toaster on your counter versus if you keep your toaster in a shelf, you're eating X percentage less calories or bread or whatever the thing is, right? Because you can't see it and because it's not as convenient. What are ways that you could make social interaction more convenient? Is that shifting your career? Like this person at the beginning shared, hey, I work at night and I don't see a lot of people. I'm considering a career change. Even you, I spend a lot of time at home. Maybe I should get a job at a coffee shop to just meet and interact with more people. Yeah. That's kind of drastic. Like changing your workplace is kind of drastic. I'm going to go back to the libraries. I think there's a resurgence in reading, which is a solo task. I joined a book club. There's a whole app called Book Clubs where you can find a book club in your area, or you could start one. Things that might be exciting to you, things that might be convenient to you, things that might be close in proximity to you. How do you dwindle it down to make it accessible to you in your situation in this phase of life?
Amen.
We love y'all. If you want to join our book club, we do a book every month. The Something More Society link is in the description. You can join. It's $6 a month. You can chat with us and you can chat with other people in the community, which I think is even more valuable.
I'm looking forward to seeing it grow and to doing different things with the Patreon. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
See you next time.
See you next time. We're ditching the surface level relationships, so join us in creating something more human.
We're so happy that you're here, and we always want to go deeper with you. So we created the Something More Society. It's the go-to place to level up your connection, community, and collaboration. We have monthly book clubs, exclusive chat channels, mini episodes and Q&As with Elliot and I, and so much more.
If you're enjoying the show and want to find other ways to support, you can hit follow or subscribe on your favorite listening or viewing platform. Leaving a 5-star review would go a long way, along with a thoughtful review. Thank you so much.
Love you guys.